Aloha boys and girls, welcome back to yet again another video. I don't know how I'm awake right now, but I am. I just got done watching the entire event, doing a 2.5 hour Sticks episode talking about the entire event, and now I have time to make a couple videos. It's currently around 10 p.m. I do have school in the morning, so let's see how this works out. Alright, so before we get into anything as well as the event is related, now keep in mind there are a lot of roster mania stuff that have gone down, which will be in another video. This is solely talking about the Season 3 playoffs recap, but stay tuned, I will be probably double uploading today. This is currently going to be on the 21st when I upload this, or the 22nd. Whenever you guys watch this, make sure to stay tuned for my next video, which will be coming out talking about roster changes and everything that has happened. Just letting you guys know that, so we're good, I think we're good now. Let's get into the actual placings from this weekend. Alright, so obviously this was a 12-team tournament, the Season 3 regular season. Due to the DDoSing that kind of went down and whatnot, they actually had to go ahead and replay everything. Every team played each other once, and that was kind of based on the seeding, just kind of laying it out for you guys heading into this tournament. But this was overall $175,000. This tournament specific, $75K prize pool, a phenomenal event, I must say. It was probably one of the best events that I've ever watched in NAW, in quotes there. NAW, in quotes there. But it was truly a fantastic event. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go over on my placings and kind of talk about each team, not in super specifics because it is kind of late, but I don't want to make this super long because everyone kind of knows what happened, but still, I'm going to go over each team, kind of talk about how they did, but go over the placings first. So coming in 9th through 12th, we did have Rise Nation, TCM, TK, and Orbit. Now, a lot of people thought that coming into this event, the bottom 4 teams from this tournament would not be in the future Pro League, whether that's MLG who's hosting it or whatnot for Black Ops 3. That is not true. It completely disbands. All these teams are not guaranteed a spot for the next season. Obviously, a lot of them probably will be there, but it's not guaranteed, like I said. So don't worry if you're a fan of Orbit, TK, TCM, or Rise Nation. You don't have to worry. Your teams are not going to have to suffer due to their placing from this event. So with those bottom teams, we do move on to 7th and 8th, which was Optic Nation and Team Envy. Moving on to 5th through 6th, we had Denial Esports and Isolation. Wait, why do they have Isolation? It should be Isolation or Empire, not Esports. Come on now. Either way, I don't know what's going on. But moving on, we had a 4th place team, which was Elevate. 3rd, we had Epsilon Esports, and in 2nd, we had Optic Gaming, and in 1st, we had FaZe Clan. Another thing coming into this event, which I did not take into kind of retrospect, was the fact that they're playing DLC maps for the first time since like relegation or X Games, and they're going to be playing best of 7. I was actually on the ESR bracket show, and we didn't know that there was going to be best of 7s either, so I'm not gonna say I didn't like that, but no one really knew. I gotta say though, I did enjoy the best of 7s, which we'll get into my favorite series and whatnot. So gotta say, while I wasn't expecting the best of 7, I kind of liked it. Alright, now so what we're going to show you guys is the winners bracket. We're going to kind of go over each game, not in super specifics, but kind of talk about each team and kind of go over what exactly happened. So as you guys can see, the 8 teams who are obviously in winners round 1 are the I guess you'd say the bottom 8, which doesn't really kind of explain what it is. Basically, the top 4 teams were guaranteed a bye for the first round. It's a 12-team tournament. It's kind of hard to set up, but the top 4 teams did guarantee a bye for the first round. They obviously played the winner of that winners round 1, which we'll get into. So the first game, which obviously went down, was Rise Nation versus TK. Immediate surprise. I would have not predicted that Rise Nation would win, especially in that type of format. Rise Nation 4-0 team caliber off the start. Amazing play out of them. They played pretty well in their first game, kind of got dominated everywhere else, but still, Rise Nation, a very solid team, and did that against TK. Thought TK would come out a little bit stronger than that, but just didn't. They didn't even win a game in their first round, so kind of unfortunate. Had TK moving on. Obviously, we saw other things. Moving on to our next game, which actually went down between Isolation Esports, I gotta say Isolation Empire, not Esports, either way, and Orbit. That kind of game was projected to be in ISO's favor, but a 4-3 Game 7, first Game 7, and the only Game 7 of winners round 1. Pretty surprising, I'm not gonna lie. I thought that one would go easier to ISO, maybe a 4-1, maybe even a 4-0. Not a 4-3, I gotta say. Was kind of surprised by the guys over on Orbit. Pretty good job. Obviously, they didn't place very well, but still put up a pretty good fight against the boys over on ISO. Next game we had was TCM taking on Envy. Pretty standard as well, I gotta say. Envy winning that one 4-1. Pretty, I keep saying pretty. Either way, that was normal. I'm gonna say I kind of predicted that one to go in Envious's favor for sure. The boys in blue, they didn't have a very good event. They definitely showed their dominance in this first game versus TCM. I have to say as well, the bottom 2 brackets, I guess you could say, the bottom two groups of teams, was definitely the harder side. You have Epsilon, who had a fantastic event. You have FaZe, you have Denial, you have Elevate, you have a fantastic group of teams, along with Envy as well. All these teams are fantastic, and I gotta say, top two groups of teams had a little bit easier than the bottom side, which also did come into play with seeding. So you can't really hate on the format and say, oh my gosh, MLG, they screwed over, FaZe and Envy and Epsilon and Denial. It's like, no, that's just how the seeding kind of worked out. So can't hate on them there. So along with, obviously, Envy taking out TCM, our last game of Winners Round 1 was between Epsilon and Denial, and this was one of the many games that we would see go in Epsilon's favor. A phenomenal play out of them. I have to say, Epsilon had a fantastic tournament, completely dominated. I know you guys can kind of see the winners bracket, how it went through, but their first game, 4-2ing Denial. I thought, honestly, this was just Denial playing bad. I was like, Denial just didn't play well off the start. This is kind of unfortunate for them. Another really bad start for them. Obviously, in DC, they lost to TK Game 5, Round 11. This time, they lose to another kind of underdog coming into the game in Epsilon. But Epsilon later showed that they were not an underdog. If I would have saw the two games, which actually happened after this one, prior to the game versus Denial, I would have 100% went with Epsilon because of how good they later played. But now, with that, we're going to move on to Winners Round 2, which was between Optic Gaming and Rise Nation. Optic winning Rise. I have to say, that's not really a surprise at all. Rise Nation, a good team, but not strong enough for the Green Wall. They've obviously won 8 events in this title so far, looking so dominant. Not really a surprise. Moving on, obviously, Optic Gaming and Optic Nation both did have a bye, and Optic Nation will later go in to play ISO. I gotta say, ISO and ON kind of back and forth. I wasn't sure who would win, and it kind of did show how close it would be. 4-3 in favor of Isolation Esports. Either way, it was a fantastic series. It was obviously one of the first Game 7s that we've seen. ISO involved in both of those. Could kind of play to their close games so far, but still ISO able to come out victors in that one. Later, we saw FaZe taking on Envy. Was really excited coming into the series. I was like, FaZe and Envy, gonna be a fantastic game. Probably gonna go to Game 7. Didn't happen that way. FaZe came out 4-1. Them looked very, very solid, and it was kind of unfortunate because the boys in blue would be down in the losers bracket, and they'd have to make a pretty long run. Not sure why I said it like that. I'm making it sound very dramatic. But moving on to our final game of Winners Round 2, we had Elevate taking on Epsilon Esports. Epsilon 4-1's Elevate. What? Like, Epsilon, they beat Denial. They now beat Elevate. And they're getting ready to face off against FaZe. And spoiler alert, they win that one 4-1. FaZe once again getting beat by an underdog. Last time it was Justice 3-0. This time 4-1. Epsilon beating FaZe. And I gotta say, it's honestly, every time I see FaZe get beat by an underdog team, it's the first hard point. It's the first hard point. If FaZe is 2-0 down, and if this was a best of 7 series, you can kind of guarantee you're going to 3-0, 3-1 sweep them, because it's very hard for FaZe to come back. Now, can they make comebacks? Have they made comebacks in this tournament? Yeah, they have, absolutely, but it's very hard for them to make that comeback. You're not normally going to see a team, let alone them, make that one back. So Epsilon beating FaZe completely caught me off guard, and it would later be up to Optic Nation and ISO to face off against Epsilon. Optic 4-2ing ISO. ISO is a pretty wild cardish team, and they kind of show their dominance once again, but ISO not strong enough. Optic versus Epsilon in the winners final. Winner of this game advances to the grand final, and I have to say, Epsilon, along with this game, played a fantastic game. It was probably one of the closest games that one of the best series that I've seen in all of Advanced Warfare. Not lying. But I'm going to read you guys off the map count. So I have every single map, all the scores. I'm just going to read this off really quickly. So Game 1, Retreat Hardpoint, 222 to 139 in favor of Optic Gaming. Retreat Hardpoint. Later went to Skyrise S&D, 6-5. Round 11, Epsilon was able to take that one. Biolab Uplink, 10-9 in favor of Epsilon. Detroit Hardpoint, 218 to 211 in favor of Epsilon. So Epsilon's up 3-1. And OG powers back in Solar. They win 6-0. So a map that they previously lost round 11 on Skyrise, they 6-0 Epsilon in Solar. We went to Detroit Uplink for Game 6, 7-4 in favor of OG. And in Game 7, 6-5, round 11 over on Recovery. Optic was able to clutch up in round 11. So in 3 of the Search and Destroys, 2 of them were round 11s, and 1 of them was 6-0. Like, the amount of consistency is phenomenal. But this was by far my favorite series, along with the next one that Epsilon would have against FaZe. Insane series between these two. Phenomenal plays. Royalty and Nagafen constantly went off the entire weekend, especially against Optic Gaming, but Optic came back 3 games straight, was able to clutch it up, being down 3-1. Epsilon just not able to narrow it out. So kind of unfortunate for those guys, but they would be advancing to the losers bracket. Optic Gaming advances to the winners, and we'll kind of go over the losers bracket right now. So I'm going to kind of go over this really quickly, not too much because it is the losers bracket, but kind of talking a little bit over our losers round 1 matches. Obviously, Elevate, TK, Envy, Orbit, Optic Nation, TCM, Rise Nation, and Denial all knocked into the losers bracket pretty early on. Elevate takes out TK. TK already out of the tournament, losing 2 games straight. Envy 4-0's Orbit. Orbit already out. Optic Nation able to beat TCM. Not too much of a surprise, but still Optic Nation, TCM, pretty close teams together, but Owen became victors in that one. Rise Nation in Denial. After Rise's performance versus TK and then losing to OG, you could argue they might have a little bit of contention versus Denial, but Denial had other plans that did end up 4-0ing Rise. It would be Elevate and Envy facing off against each other, Game 7, not a round 7, a Game 7 phenomenal series. Elevate, however, became victors, and Envy would be out that early. I gotta say, Envy, once again, having a difficult bracket. I feel bad for them, man. Every tournament, it seems like they always have a problem with the bracket. This time it was just based on seeding. It wasn't randomized, and they got I wouldn't say screwed because they didn't, but it's just like they kind of screwed themselves over because of where they get placed. I feel really bad for them, but they did get out pretty early. But Elevate, a very good team. If you're gonna lose to anyone, I gotta say Elevate's not a bad team to lose to. You can still walk off with your heads up after losing to Elevate. But on the other side, like I mentioned, it would be Denial taking on Optic Nation. Denial would be able to 4-0 a win, later advancing versus FaZe. FaZe actually 4-2ing Denial in losers round 3. A phenomenal job out of FaZe. They kept powering back to the losers bracket and beat some really good teams. This is where they would kind of just start off with. FaZe, a phenomenal squad, as everyone knows, a phenomenal team. And there was one play on comeback uplink where I think it was comeback uplink. One of the Denial players went for a shot. Clayster intercepts it and was able to throw that one out. That kind of just led to the momentum, and FaZe was able to take out Denial in that game. Elevate versus ISO. Elevate pretty pumped off of that last win versus Envy, a very solid team. And ISO, what I would consider a wild card team, couldn't really prevail against the Red Rebellion, I guess you could say. If I'm casting, I would always call them the Red Rebellion because that's a dope name. But still, Elevate 4-1ing ISO. Kind of would predict that similar type of game score, but ISO, like I said, a streaky team, could be good at sometimes, could also struggle a little bit. Elevate still victors no matter what. FaZe versus Elevate, going to be a good loser semi. FaZe coming out really strong, and obviously was able to take out Elevate 4-2. Now the Epsilon has recently lost to Optic Gaming in a phenomenal series. It would be Epsilon taking on FaZe. Winner of this game will be playing against Optic Gaming in the grand finals and have to come back from 2 best of 7s. This series definitely lived up to the hype. A phenomenal game. Also went to Game 7. Epsilon was up 3-0. They were up 3-0, and FaZe made the comeback. They won 4 straight games in a best of 7. That is a record. That has never happened before, where a team has gone up 3 games to 0, and a team has been able to come back. Obviously, it is a best of 7. Normally, if you're up 3-0, you automatically win the series. But still, never happened before. A phenomenal job out of FaZe to be breaking records throughout the entire event. This is just one of the many things that they did. They would 4-3 Epsilon. It would be Optic Gaming versus FaZe in the grand finals. We've seen Optic, FaZe, or Denial in every single major for Advanced Warfare, and it's only been Denial one time who have been in the grand finals by themselves, which was at World Championships, obviously at COD Champs. So a lot of people will say it's been a very inconsistent game, but having the same basically 2 teams except for one event, one major in the grand finals, pretty dominant from FaZe and Optic's perspective. But going over the maps, because FaZe would absolutely dominate in the first best of 7, and they would end up winning that one 4-1. I would kind of go over the games, but it was just straight dominance, to be honest with you. They ended up 4-1ing them. Like I said, FaZe came out strong, winning the first 2 games. Optic took the Uplink Parliament 9-3. I have to say, if there was a map for them to win, I would definitely not want them to win that one. For the fact that you're 2-0 down, you could be at 1-1, you could be at 1-0. That can honestly lead to a lot of success for OG. I think, honestly, when Optic Gaming wins 2 maps in a row, that's when they get going. If they win 1 map in a row and then they completely get countered, that entire, I guess you could say that entire kind of emotion that they had is gone. It's just completely gone. You can't really guarantee anything after that. So Optic not able to win the first best of 7. FaZe coming out insanely strong as well. Then we move on to our second best of 7, which would be similar to the first one. After the first best of 7, I have to say, Optic looked incredibly shaky. They did not look like the same Optic that we've seen in the past. Now, I'm not sure, and what we'll probably see in the videos coming out within the days of the OG players kind of making post-event vlogs and whatnot. We'll see what kind of happens with them, but still, not a very good first start on that first best of 7 for Optic. I don't know what it was, whether it was just them playing shaky or if it was FaZe just on another level like we've seen them play at times. But still, next best of 7. First game we have Biolob Hardpoint. OG comes out, wins narrowly by just a few points. Can't say that that was probably one of the biggest wins that OG had to have. Later heading into Detroit S&D, 6-5, round 11. FaZe ends up winning that one. Gotta say, if one round probably honestly decided the grand finals, I have to say this, because if OG wins 2 games in a row, they win Biolab Hardpoint, they win Detroit S&D, they have comeback uplink, not one of their best maps. But imagine round 11 just takes a lot out of you. Whether you lose 6-3, 6-2, it's a little bit different. But round 11, you're so close to winning, and you can't just pull it out. It's unfortunate, and FaZe just kind of counted on that. They would win 4 games straight, winning Detroit S&D, comeback uplink, drift hardpoint, and Skyrise, which honestly was just kind of OG. They showed up for the map, but it wasn't the same OG that we've seen in the past. I'm not a big fan of Skyrise. It's just explosions and snipes going off constantly, but they started off hot. They won, I think, 4 or 5 rounds in a row. FaZe did, and OG just kind of won 1 round, and then FaZe closed it out. But unfortunate ending for Optic Gaming. They obviously didn't win. They didn't lose a single game until the grand finals, FaZe winning and beating them twice, 4-1 in both of the best of 7 grand finals. FaZe actually set a couple records this weekend. First of all, like I mentioned, being down 0-3 and making the comeback 4 games straight versus Epsilon, and the first team to make 2 best of 7 comebacks in an entire series. This is the first time we've seen a team make 2 best of 7 comebacks and end up winning the entire game. So phenomenal job out of FaZe. They did countless things, and they also stopped OG from going undefeated in MLG Pro League seasons for Advanced Warfare. Optic won the first Pro League, they won the second Pro League, and now FaZe was able to become victors in Season 3, the final season of Advanced Warfare. And I believe they also played like 23 or 24 maps on Sunday alone, which is crazy. Normally people would say, oh, they must have played the entire day. There was only like 3 or 4 games that went on today, and all of them were basically because of the grand finals and because of the amount of game 7s that they had been in the days today. So phenomenal job out of FaZe. A lot of people will say, teams get drained out. It's really unfortunate and whatnot. I have to say, Clayster was the main factor for FaZe, and you could point out Zuma's performance in Search and Destroy enables consistency. Attaches great job on Sunday, due to his pretty much bad performance on Friday and Saturday. But Clayster, he kept the guys intact, and that's exactly what Clay does. And I always say this, I feel like Clay is more valuable than just how good he is at the game. He's a leader, and he's exactly what you want if you're on a struggling team. If you have a team that's not necessarily the best, he's been able to lead people. He's been the MVP of COD Champs. He is by far one of the best, if not the best player in Advanced Warfare, not for his skill alone, but for his leadership, for his outside things he does outside of Call of Duty, leading teams and whatnot. And it was just, they won 1 game. They'd say, you know what, we have 3 left. Once they were in the final game and they were up 3-1 over OG in that Skyrise Search and Destroy, it was, we have 5 rounds left. We have 4 rounds left. We have 3 rounds left. Like, let's keep this going. Let's keep this hype going. He kept the guys focused, and honestly, Clayster, without a doubt, you could point out KDs. I'm not even going to look at the KDs because it doesn't matter. But for sure, gotta say, Clayster the MVP. As far as like an entire event, I could point out a couple of guys from Epsilon. You could say Parasite's leadership in a way. You could say Royalty Slang. You could say Nagafen's clutch ability, as I just hit my mic. But still, Epsilon had a phenomenal event. All of the players went off, and major props to them. They were definitely the surprising factor for this tournament. But if I had an MVP, gotta give it to Clay. Led his team. Being down 2 best of 7s is not an easy feat, especially against what people would consider the best team in the game, Optic Gaming, not looking like the typical green wall, which we've seen in previous events. But like I said, guys, if you guys did enjoy, make sure to leave a like on this video. It really, really does help me out, and I hope you guys did enjoy my recap for the Season 3 playoffs recap, I guess you could say. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the event. I honestly loved it. I had a great time watching, and we have Worlds left, the final, basically, tier event to look at, for NA as well as EU players as well. I'm going to be at Worlds, so if you guys are there, if you have this video in the back of your mind, maybe you'll see me there. We'll see. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of roster mania stuff to mention as well. Like I said, make sure to be staying tuned for my next video, which will be coming out in a couple hours, talking about all the changes that have happened, because there have been a lot of stuff. A lot of the rosters that I've talked about aren't the same with a lot of stuff that has gone down. So guys, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's not too long, and I've said hopefully a couple times, but hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys for the next one, and until next time, peace out.